My wife Sophia stood in the center of the room and told me we were having a baby. She smiled the way people do when they expect applause. Her hands rested gently on her stomach. She looked like a portrait of happiness. She expected me to cry. She expected me to pick her up and spin her around the living room. Instead, I did the math. The arithmetic was simple and brutal. We had not been intimate in 3 months. Not a touch. Not a kiss that lasted longer than a second. My shift at the fabrication plant ends at 4 in the morning. By the time I wake up, she is usually gone. Lately, the distance between us had grown from a crack into a canyon. But she stood there claiming she was 6 weeks along. That is not a miracle. That is an insult to my intelligence. I am Mateo. I run a welding crew in North Dallas. My life is built on steel, heat, and absolute precision. If a beam is off by a fraction of an inch, the structure fails. I treat my life the same way. When a number does not add up, I do not ignore it. I measure it. I did not scream. I did not throw the coffee mug I was holding. I forced the muscles in my face to relax. I walked over to her and kissed her forehead. "That is incredible news," I said. My voice was steady. "We should celebrate." She exhaled, her shoulders dropping. She thought she had won. She thought I was the simple man who worked with his hands and never asked questions. She did not know that I had already seen the receipt from the clinic. I found it yesterday, tucked inside a folded car insurance policy in the glove box. The date was clear. 6 weeks. The war began right then, but only one of us knew we were fighting. I told her I needed to check the oil in the truck before my shift. I walked out to the garage, where the air smelled of grease and dust. I did not check the oil. I opened the bottom drawer of my red tool chest. Under a tray of socket wrenches, I found the GPS tracker. I had bought it a week ago when the suspicion first settled in my gut like a bad meal. I slid under the rear bumper of her sedan. The metal was cold against my back. I found a flat spot on the frame, hidden from view but clear for a signal. The magnet clicked into place with a sound that felt like a judge slamming a gavel. Solid. Permanent. I went back inside. We ate dinner. I listened to her talk about names. She suggested names like Leo and Gabriel. I nodded at the right times. I played the role of the excited father perfectly. Inside, I was already planning the demolition. The next morning, the test began. Sophia told me she was going to visit her mother in San Antonio for the weekend. "She needs help with the garden," Sophia said, sipping her tea. "I will be back Sunday night." San Antonio is 5 hours south on Interstate 35. I kissed her goodbye. I watched her back out of the driveway. I waited 15 minutes. Then I opened the tracking app on my phone. The little red dot was not moving south. It was heading north. She was driving toward the wealthy suburbs where the driveways are long and the secrets are expensive. I grabbed my keys. I did not take my work truck. I took my old sedan, the one with the faded paint that blends into any parking lot in Texas. I followed the signal. I kept a 3-mile distance. The dot stopped in a neighborhood called Stone Creek. This is where the executives live. The houses have pillars and 3-car garages. I parked 2 blocks away. I walked the rest of the distance, sticking to the shade of the oak trees. I saw her car parked in the driveway of a massive white brick house. She was not inside yet. She was standing on the porch. The front door opened. A man walked out. I stopped breathing for a second. I knew him. Carlos. 5 years ago, Carlos and I tried to bid on a commercial contract together. I pulled out when I realized he was cutting corners on materials. He used cheap steel and billed for premium. He was a charming liar then. He looked like a wealthy liar now. He wore white linen pants and a shirt that cost more than my weekly grocery bill. He did not just greet my wife. He pulled her close. He kissed her with a familiarity that made my stomach turn. Then he placed his hand on her stomach. She covered his hand with hers. They laughed. It was the picture of a perfect family. I took my phone out. I did not shake. I zoomed in. Click. Faces clear. Click. The license plate of the red convertible parked next to her car. Click. The house number. They went inside and closed the heavy wooden door. Most men would have stormed the house. Most men would have kicked the door down and thrown a punch. But anger is a sloppy tool. Anger makes you messy. I needed to be precise. I walked back to my car and sat in the silence. I opened the browser on my phone. I needed to know who I was really dealing with. Carlos looked like a king in his castle. But I know construction. A fresh coat of paint often hides rot. I pulled up the county appraisal district records. Public information is a beautiful thing. The house was listed under his name, but there was a red flag in the status column. Notice of default filed 20 days ago. Foreclosure auction scheduled for the first Tuesday of next month. I stared at the screen. The math shifted again. Carlos was not rich. He was broke. He was weeks away from losing everything. I checked his business filings. His construction LLC had been dissolved by the state for tax forfeiture 4 months ago. The red convertible in the driveway? A quick search of the plate showed a lien holder with a predatory lender's name. The picture was coming into focus, sharp and ugly. This was not just an affair. This was a survival strategy. Carlos was drowning in debt. He had no income. He was about to lose his home. And here was my wife, pregnant with his child, telling me lies about visiting her mother. Why keep me? Why not leave me for the father of her child? I checked my own bank app. I looked at our joint savings account. The numbers looked normal at a glance. But then I clicked on the transaction history for the last 90 days. Small withdrawals. $200 here. $500 there. Cash withdrawals at ATMs near her office. Nothing big enough to trigger an alert, but enough to bleed us dry over time. Then I saw the pending transfer. $5,000 scheduled to move on Monday. The label on the transfer was Medical Reserve. I sat in my car and felt a cold smile form on my face. They were not just betraying me. They were looting me. They planned to use my money to float his sinking ship. They wanted my insurance to cover the birth. They wanted my salary to pay for the nursery in a house that the bank was about to seize. I started the engine. I did not drive toward the house. I drove away. I had seen enough to know the shape of the problem. Now I needed to build the solution. I called my brother Luis. Luis is a locksmith. I need you to come to the house tonight, I said. Bring the heavy-duty deadbolts. And bring a box of trash bags. Everything okay, Mateo? He asked. No, I said. But it is going to be. I drove home with the calmness of a man who has just finished the blueprints for a demolition. The foundation was rotten. It was time to bring the whole thing down. But I would not do it with a hammer. I would do it with paper, silence, and the absolute truth. I pulled into my driveway. The house was quiet. I walked into the kitchen and saw the calendar on the fridge. She had circled a date in November with a blue marker. Due date, she had written, followed by a smiley face. I took the marker. I did not cross it out. I turned the page to next week. I circled Saturday. That was the night I would host a dinner. That was the night the truth would sit at our table. I took out my notebook. I wrote down 3 things I needed to do before Saturday. 1. Secure the assets. 2. Get the DNA test kit that can be done without her knowing. 3. Invite Carlos to dinner. I looked at the 3rd item on the list. Inviting the man who was sleeping with my wife seemed crazy. But he was the key. He was the weak link. A man desperate for money will walk into any trap if he thinks there is gold inside. I sent a text to a friend who works at a blood lab. Then I opened my laptop to check the Texas property code laws. I was not a husband anymore. I was a prosecutor building a case. And the trial was starting soon. Sophia returned Sunday evening. She did not look like a woman who had spent 2 days digging in dirt. Her nails were perfect. Her skin smelled of lavender lotion, not sweat. She kissed my cheek and told me her mother's hydrangeas were blooming. I handed her a glass of water and listened to the lie. I did not ask for details. I did not want to give her a chance to rehearse her script. Monday morning, I went to work, but I did not go to the fabrication plant. I drove straight to the bank. I sat down with Mrs. Ramirez, the branch manager who has handled my business accounts for 12 years. I need a full audit of the joint checking and savings, I said. Every transaction over $50 for the last 6 months. She printed the stack of papers. The sound of the laser printer was the only noise in the office. I took a red pen and started circling. The pattern was smarter than I expected. Sophia had not just withdrawn cash. She had set up automatic bill payments to a company called Titan Construction. I knew Titan Construction. It was the shell company Carlos used before the state revoked his license. Stop these payments, I told Mrs. Ramirez. I can stop future ones, she said, adjusting her glasses. But the money that is gone, Mateo. Unless you file a fraud claim. Not yet, I said. I want to freeze the account on Friday at 5 in the afternoon. Not a minute sooner. I needed the line to stay open until the trap was shut. I walked out of the bank and made a call to my lawyer, Elena. She is not a family lawyer. She is a corporate shark who specializes in hostile takeovers. I need to liquidate, I told her. Everything. The trucks, the welders, the inventory. I want to sell it all to Luis. For how much? She asked. $10, I said. There was a pause on the line. Then she laughed, a dry, sharp sound. I will draw up the papers. Asset protection strategy. We will frame it as a liability transfer to protect against a potential lawsuit. It is legal, but barely. That afternoon, I met Luis at the warehouse. We signed the documents on the hood of my truck. In the eyes of the state of Texas, I was now a man with 0 assets and a minimum wage job as a consultant for my brother's new company. If Sophia tried to claim half my business in a divorce, she would get half of nothing. The first twist, Tuesday, brought a surprise I did not calculate. Sophia left her tablet on the kitchen counter while she went to get groceries. It pinged. I saw a notification from a secure messaging app. I knew her passcode. It was her birthday. She is not creative with security. I opened the app. The thread was not with Carlos. It was with a user named Dr_G. I scrolled up. It was not a doctor. It was a dealer. I need more of the anxiety meds, she wrote. He is starting to ask questions about why I am so tired. Same price, the reply read. $200 a pop. My wife was not just cheating. She was buying unprescribed sedatives to keep herself numb while she played house with me. And she was paying for them with the money I earned sweating under a welding mask. This explained the mood swings, the long naps, the headaches. It was not pregnancy hormones. It was withdrawal and a high. I took photos of the chat with my phone. This was ammunition for a custody battle if she tried to fight for the baby I knew was not mine. The second twist, Wednesday was the day for the medical evidence. I knew she had her 12-week checkup scheduled. I could not force a paternity test without a court order, which would tip my hand. But I knew the system. I called the clinic. I pretended to be the billing department from her insurance company. We have a flag on the account for Sophia, I said. We need to verify the coding for the prenatal blood work to authorize coverage. The receptionist was helpful. She read off the codes. Then she mentioned the add-on service. She requested the NIPT panel. The receptionist said, non-invasive prenatal testing. It determines gender and genetic markers. Does it require a father's sample? I asked. No, sir. It uses fetal DNA in the mother's blood. But she marked the box to send results to her separate email, not the family portal. I hung up. I did not need a swab. The test was already done. I just needed the password to her private email. I went back to the tablet. The browser had saved her passwords. I logged in. The email from the lab was there, unread. She had not seen it yet. I opened the PDF. The probability of paternity for the sample provided, which they had on file from a previous checkup of mine 2 years ago, was 0%. The biological father was listed as unknown male relative. I forwarded the PDF to my secure cloud storage. Then I marked the email as unread. I printed a copy at the library. I put it in a yellow manila envelope. The evidence was complete. Now I needed the guest of honor. Thursday night, the house was quiet. Sophia was in the shower. I heard the water running. I grabbed her phone from the nightstand. I opened the chat with Elena, her code name for Carlos. I typed fast. He knows something is wrong, but he thinks it is tax trouble. He is selling the business this week to hide cash. He will have $50,000 in the house on Saturday. I waited. The 3 dots appeared. That is a lot of cash, Carlos replied. Come to dinner Saturday, I typed. 7 o'clock. We will confront him. We will threaten to go to the IRS unless he gives us the cash as a settlement. He is weak. He will pay. I will be there, Carlos wrote. I deleted the messages. I put the phone back exactly how I found it. The trap was not just about exposing them. It was about greed. Carlos was a desperate man. He would walk into a fire if he thought there was a dollar bill in the ashes. Friday at 5 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was Mrs. Ramirez from the bank. It is done, Mateo. The accounts are frozen. The credit cards are canceled. Thank you, I said. I drove home. I stopped at a liquor store and bought a bottle of expensive champagne. I walked into the house whistling. Sophia was on the couch, rubbing her feet. Good news? She asked, looking up. The best, I said. I solved all our problems. Tomorrow, we celebrate. She smiled. It was the smile of a woman who sees a finish line. She did not know she was running toward a cliff. I went to the closet and took out my best suit. I ironed the shirt myself. Sharp creases. Clean lines. Tomorrow, I would not be a husband. I would be a judge, jury, and executioner. And the sentence would be total ruin. Saturday arrived with the heavy silence of a courtroom before a verdict. I spent the afternoon cooking steaks. I wanted the house to smell like a celebration. Sophia wore the blue dress again. She sat at the dining table, checking her phone every 2 minutes. She was waiting for a transfer notification from the bank. She did not know the only thing coming was a hurricane. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Sophia jumped. Her phone rattled against the table. Who is that? She asked, her voice tight. Did you order food? I invited a guest, I said, slicing a lemon. Someone who has a vested interest in our future. I nodded at the door. She stood up, confused, and walked to the entryway. I stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the counter. I wanted to see her face when the door opened. She unlocked the deadbolt. The door swung inward. Carlos stood on the porch. He looked desperate. His eyes were scanning the room before he even stepped inside. He was sweating. Carlos, Sophia whispered. What are you doing here? He pushed past her. He did not look at her with love. He looked at her like she was an employee who was late for a shift. He marched into the dining room and locked eyes with me. Where's the cash, Mateo? Carlos demanded. The text said $50,000. Small bills. Sophia froze. She looked at him, then at me. The color drained from her face. Text? She stammered. What text? The one you sent me on Thursday, Carlos snapped. Don't play dumb, Sophia. We are here to settle. He pays us, and we leave him alone. The first twist, Sophia realized in that second that she had lost control of the narrative. She had never sent that text. She looked at me with pure fear. She saw the calm man she thought was a fool, and she realized I was the one holding the remote control. Sit down, I said. My voice was low, but it filled the room. I placed a heavy yellow envelope on the table between the two plates. There is no cash, Carlos, I said. You are lying, Carlos shouted. He took a step toward me. You sold the business. You are hiding assets. I know the law. I did sell the business, I replied. I sold it to my brother Luis on Monday for $10. The transaction is filed with the county clerk. I have zero equity. I have zero cash. I am an employee now. Carlos stopped. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The greed in his eyes turned to panic. And this house, he asked. Transferred to a family trust yesterday, I said. You are standing on property that legally belongs to my father. You are trespassing. Sophia made a noise like a wounded animal. She slumped into a chair. You gave everything away, she whispered. For what? To hurt me? To protect myself, I said. From thieves. I reached for the envelope. I pulled out the first document. The DNA test. 0%, I said, sliding the paper across the mahogany table. I am not the father. But we all knew that. Carlos did not even look at the paper. He was pacing the room, running his hands through his hair. He was realizing his payday had vanished. I don't care about the kid, Carlos spat out. I need money. The bank is taking my house on Tuesday. The second twist, Sophia's head snapped up. What did you say? I pulled out the second document. The foreclosure notice for Carlos's mansion. He is broke, Sophia, I said. He has been broke for 6 months. He is $300,000 in debt. He was using you. He wanted my money to save his own skin. He didn't want a family. He wanted a bailout. Sophia looked at Carlos. The illusion of the rich, successful lover shattered. She saw him for what he was, a panic con artist in a cheap leather jacket. Is this true? She asked. Carlos ignored her. He looked at me with hatred. You think you are smart, welder? You think you can just leave her with nothing? She has you, I said cold. And you have each other. That is what you wanted, right? True love? Carlos laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. I don't want her. She is expensive. And now she comes with a kid I can't afford. He turned to the door. I am leaving. This was a waste of gas. Wait, I said. I pulled out the final piece of paper. The screenshot of the chat with the drug dealer. Before you go, Carlos, you should know that I have already forwarded this to the Child Protective Services tip line and to the Narcotics Division. Sophia stood up, knocking her chair over. Mateo, no. That is a prescription. It is a chat log with a dealer named Dr. G, I corrected. Buying controlled substances while pregnant. That is a felony, and it is child endangerment. Carlos froze at the door. He was on probation for ADUI from 2 years ago. A drug investigation would send him to jail. I didn't buy anything, Carlos stammered. That is on her. You were in the chat, I lied. I saw your number in her contacts. The room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Here is the deal, I said. You both leave. Now, you take your bags. You take your drama. And you never contact me again. If you do, I press send on the email to the police. I file the fraud charges for the money Sophia stole from the account. I destroy both of you. Sophia looked at me. She was crying. But they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of defeat. She reached for my hand. Mateo, please. I have nowhere to go. My mother won't take me if she knows about the baby. You should have thought about that before you invited Carlos into my bed, I said. Get out. Carlos opened the door and ran to his car. He did not wait for her. He peeled out of the driveway, leaving black tire marks on the pavement. Sophia stood alone in the hallway. She looked at the door, then back at me. He left me, she whispered. He never was with you, I said. I called a rideshare for you. It will be here in 2 minutes. Your suitcases are on the porch. I sat down at the table. I cut into my steak. It was cooked perfectly medium rare. I took a bite. I did not look at her as she walked out the door. The lock clicked shut behind her. The silence returned. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I changed the locks at dawn on Sunday. The sound of the drill biting into the wood was the only noise in the neighborhood. I did not just change the keys. I installed steel reinforcement plates on the door jambs. I was not protecting a home anymore. I was securing a fortress. Monday morning, the legal assault began. My phone rang at 8 o'clock. It was Elena. Sophia has a lawyer, Elena said. A billboard attorney who likes to make noise. They filed an emergency motion to freeze the sale of the business to Luis. They are claiming fraudulent conveyance. They say you sold it to hide assets from the divorce. Let them claim it, I said. I have the appraisal from last month. The business was technically insolvent due to the equipment loans. Luis bought the debt, not the profit. If she wants half the business, she gets half the debt. I will draft the response, Elena said. But Mateo, get ready. She is going to play the victim card hard. I drove to the warehouse. Luis was there, supervising the crew. We had removed my name from the signage. It was a shop now. Sophia called me. Luis said, not looking up from a welding torch. She was crying. She said you threw a pregnant woman onto the street. She asked for money for a motel. Did you give it to her? I asked. Luis turned off the torch. He lifted his mask. I told her to call Carlos. Then I blocked her number. The first twist, Wednesday came with a subpoena. We had to meet for a deposition at her lawyer's office. I walked into the conference room. Sophia sat on the other side of the glass table. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red. She wore a baggy sweater to hide the pregnancy. She refused to look at me. Her lawyer threw a stack of papers on the table. My client requires temporary spousal support, he announced. $5,000 a month. And she wants the truck. Denied, Elena said calmly. Then we go to trial, the lawyer threatened. We will expose your client's financial manipulation. I leaned forward. I placed my phone on the table. I played a recording. It was not a conversation. It was the voicemail Carlos had left me the night I kicked them out. He was drunk. He was screaming. You think you won, Mateo? I will burn that shop down. I will take what you owe me. Sophia told me the safe code. I am coming for it. Sophia's head snapped up. I never gave him the code. You did, I said. 2 months ago, when you thought you were helping him invest. That makes you an accessory to conspiracy to commit burglary. I slid the printed chat logs with the drug dealer across the table. And this, I pointed to the timestamps. Buying narcotics. While pregnant. Using marital funds. I looked at her lawyer. If you pursue alimony, I submit this to the judge. The state will take the baby the second it is born. Sophia will go to rehab or jail. Your choice. The lawyer stopped. He looked at the papers. He looked at Sophia. He saw a losing case. Give us a minute, he muttered. 10 minutes later, they signed the waiver. No alimony. No claim on the business. A clean break. The second twist, I walked out of the office feeling lighter, but the war was not over. Carlos was still out there. And unlike Sophia, who was weak, Carlos was stupid. And stupid men are dangerous. That night, I sat in the dark in the warehouse office. I knew he was coming. The voicemail was not just a threat, it was a promise. Carlos was desperate. He had lost his house that morning. The bank had locked him out. He had nowhere to go and nothing to lose. At 2 in the morning, a motion sensor triggered on the south loading dock. I watched the monitor. A shadow moved near the bay door. He had a crowbar. I did not call the police yet. I waited. He pried the door open. He slipped inside. He knew exactly where the floor safe was because Sophia had told him. He walked past the rows of steel beams. He reached the office door. I turned on the overhead halogen lights. The warehouse flooded with blinding white light. Carlos froze. He dropped the crowbar. I stood on the catwalk above him. I held my phone. Smile, Carlos, I said. You are live streaming. He looked up, squinting. Mateo, give me the money. I know it is here. There is no money, I yelled down. Only consequences. The third twist, I pressed a button on the wall. The automatic security shutters slammed down over the exits. The metallic crash echoed like thunder. He was trapped. Then, the siren started. I had not called 911 when he entered. I had called them an hour ago to report a suspicious vehicle loitering. The patrol car was already outside. Carlos ran to the back door. Locked. He ran to the window. Bars. He looked at me one last time. He looked like a rat in a bucket. She ruined me, he screamed. It was her idea to steal from the accounts. Tell it to the judge, I said. The police kicked in the front door. I watched from the catwalk as they tackled him. He fought. That was a mistake. They used the taser. He went down shaking. They cuffed him and dragged him out. I walked down the stairs. I picked up the crowbar he had dropped. I placed it on the desk. Evidence. I drove home. The sun was coming up. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sophia. I am at the shelter on 4th Street. They only let me stay 3 days. I am scared, Mateo. I am sorry. I looked at the text. I remembered the 3 months of silence. I remembered the cold nights while she was at hotels with him. I remembered the lies. I typed a reply. You are not scared. You are broke. There is a difference. Then I deleted the text. I did not send it. I blocked the number. The silence was free, and it was worth every penny I had lost. 8 months have passed since the night the police dragged Carlos out of my warehouse. The seasons changed from the blistering Texas summer to a gray, wet winter. The weather matched the mood in courtroom 4B. The judge was an older woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose. She looked at the stack of evidence Elena had filed. The drug logs. The financial transfers. The police report from the burglary. She looked at Sophia. Sophia stood alone. Her lawyer had quit 2 months ago because she stopped paying his bills. She held a newborn baby in her arms, wrapped in a thin blue blanket. She was trying to use the child as a shield. It was a desperate move. The court finds in favor of the petitioner, the judge said. Her voice was flat. Mr. Rodriguez is not the biological father. He has no financial obligation. The divorce is granted on grounds of adultery and cruel treatment. No alimony is awarded. Sophia began to sob. Your Honor, I have no job. I have an infant. How am I supposed to survive? The judge took off her glasses. You should have considered that before you drained the marital accounts and engaged in criminal conspiracy, Mrs. Rodriguez. Next case. I walked out of the courtroom. I did not look back. I heard Sophia calling my name in the hallway. I kept walking. The elevator doors closed, cutting off her voice. That was the last time I heard it. The first twist, Carlos did not get off easy. The plea deal his public defender negotiated was brutal. Because he broke into a commercial building with intent to commit a felony, and because he was carrying a crowbar which the state classified as a deadly weapon, the judge gave him 5 years. He is currently in a unit in Huntsville. I heard from a friend in the guard that Carlos spends his days working in the laundry, washing sheets for 10 cents an hour. He has plenty of time to think about the easy money he thought he was stealing. The fate of the child. I learned later that Child Protective Services intervened. Because of the evidence I submitted regarding her purchasing unprescribed narcotics during pregnancy, Sophia is not allowed to be alone with the baby. Her mother came up from San Antonio. The grandmother has custody. Sophia lives with her, sleeping on a couch, working double shifts at a diner to pay for diapers. She is trapped in the very life she tried to escape. The business. 2 days after the divorce was final, I met Luis at the shop. We sat in the office where Carlos had been arrested. Ready to buy it back? Luis asked, tossing me the keys. What is the price? I asked. $12. Luis grinned. 10 for the principal, 2 for the interest, and a steak dinner. I signed the papers. I was the owner again, but I made changes. I fired the clients who paid late. I focused on high-end custom fabrication. The reputation of the shop grew. People knew that Mateo did not cut corners. They knew I was a man who checked every weld. The final twist. Last Friday, I hosted a grand reopening for the expanded shop. The place was full of clients, friends, and the smell of barbecue. Elena was there. She was not wearing her stiff courtroom suit. She wore a simple dress and looked relaxed. She handed me a drink. You survived the storm, Mateo, she said. I did not just survive it, I replied. I built a better house from the wreckage. She smiled. It was a genuine smile. Over the last 8 months, our meetings had changed. We stopped talking about legal strategy and started talking about life, architecture, and the future. I have a new contract for you to review, she said, teasing. Business or personal? I asked. Maybe both, she said. I need a partner who knows the difference between a cheap fix and a solid foundation. I looked at her. I looked at my shop, humming with activity. I looked at the empty space where Sophia used to stand, and I felt nothing but relief. I realized then that revenge is not about making the other person suffer. It is about removing them from your life so completely that they become a stranger. The moral: a man's life is like a steel beam. It can take an immense amount of pressure. It can carry heavy loads. But if you let rust settle in, if you let lies and disrespect corrode the surface, it will snap. I cut out the rust. I ground the surface down to the clean metal. And now, I am stronger than I was before. Sophia and Carlos thought they were playing a game. They forgot that in the real world, the only thing that wins is the truth. I finished my drink and walked toward the future. The past was just a closed case file in a dusty box. and I never opened old boxes.